Good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Tuesday, August 11, 2015. And this is The Connection coming to you live from the Voice of America in Washington. I am Tungamili Nkomo.
And I am Tatenda Gumbo.
Tonight, we are commemorating the United Nations International Youth Day, held on August 12 each year.
And of course, as usual, every Tuesday, we want you to get connected with us on Twitter and Facebook using the hashtag #TheConnection. Our Facebook page is VOA Studio 7 and our Twitter handles @Studio7VOA. We can also get things going on our WhatsApp number, and that number is +1 202 465 0318.
And if you want to give us your contribution live on air, give us a call at the following number. That's 001-202-619-2077. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. And we will call you back.
And of course, we are streaming live on the internet. Go ahead and find us on voazimbabwe.com, voandebele.com, and also on voashona.com.
Again, this is your Youth Forum, The Connection, coming to you live from the Voice of America in Washington.
The United Nations International Youth Day this year is calling for youth throughout the world to scale up their civic engagement and achieve sustainable human development in their respective communities and countries. Civic engagement means working to make a difference in the lives of people and in your community's development with a combination of knowledge, skills, values, and motivation to make that happen.
In Zimbabwe, young people have long called for all-encompassing civic engagement and an equal opportunity to participate in not only the political landscape, but also contribute to the economic and social growth of the country. But the question remains, can young people effectively engage in the future of their country? And, Tatenda, we cannot forget that today, of course, Zimbabwe celebrated Defense Forces Day, and yesterday it was Heroes Day. So we will also be focusing on the role of young people in Zimbabwe, especially look at what can they do to take the country forward.
Should be a very interesting topic or topics indeed.
Indeed, Tatenda, and we have our guests whom we shall be introducing to you shortly, and our in-house guest, Tato Mochone. Waring Tato.
Hakibui.
Tato, of course, is a fellow who was here under the Mandela Washington Fellowship program, and she is from Lesotho. We shall be discussing, this very important topic with Tato and our other guests. But before we go there, we should remember that we have languages.
Yes.
Emakaya lichona njani lamhlanje siyadibana kuhlelo labasakhulayo uhlelo The Connection. Siphatha namhlanje udaba lwelanga elahlelwa ngumanyano we-United Nations ele International Youth Day. Sikhangela ukubana indikimba yalonyaka ikhangela ngokuphatheka kwabasakhulayo kakhulu kundaba zombusazwe, kundaba zobukhokheli. Ngakho sizabe sikhuluma sikhangela ukubana abatsha beZimbabwe kuyini abakwenzayo ukwenza impilo zabo zibe ngcono. Kwazi vatereri nasi muchirongwa chenyu chirongwa cheve chidiki tiri kutarisa zuva richange richicherechedzwa pasi rese mangwana zuva reInternational Youth Day, zuva rakatarwa neUnited Nations, uyezve dingindira regore rino nderekuti zvii zviri kuitwa nevechidiki zvikuru sei panyaya dzeutungamiri nyaya dzezvematongero enyika kuti vawanikwe vachiita kuti upenyu hwavo kana kuti remangwana ravo rive rakajeka. Tatenda, our guests, of course, I've said already that we have Tato in the studio. We also have Meli Dube, director for Bulawayo Agenda. Mr. Dube, good evening.
Good evening, Njunga. Good evening, fellow guests, and good evening, Zimbabwe.
Good. We also have Philemon Jambaya, spokesman for the Zimbabwe Youth Forum. Mr. Jambaya, good evening to you.
Good evening. How are you? Good evening, listeners.
Yes, good. Thank you for joining us. And of course, last but not least, we have Jake Zaba of the Election Resource Center. He's a project manager. Mr. Zaba, thanks for joining us and good evening.
Evening, how are you, Zimbabwe? How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Misty, let's jump straight to it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. But I will take this moment to say ladies first. And we'll come to our in-studio guest. Tato, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in your home country. And, of course, what you're doing here at VOA Studios.
Okay. I'm a journalist. I work for the state-owned radio station. It's actually a youth station, and it covers the entire country. We have a population of 2 million, and I've been with the Mandela Washington Fellowship from the 19th of June, and I will be ending on the 19th of September. So for the next 6 weeks, I will be here with you at VOA, and I'm just going to learn how journalism works in the USA as compared to back home, where we know the code of ethics and media and how media has been so in tatters. I think is because just maybe of challenges that we face as media people, that we are governed by rules which are above us, and it's just not so easy to conform to the rules of journalism. Because just maybe sometimes, or in many cases, is because the radio stations are owned by people in power, and then, it's propaganda and stuff like that. And how, as a young person, I can change and affect, how I can impact on the lives of my fellow men through journalism. What is it that I can do behind the microphone that can touch the lives of people?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Tato. Let's go straight to Mr. Dube. In Bulawayo. Mr. Dube, how much would you say, young people in Zimbabwe are engaged, insofar as shaping their own future is concerned? Hello, Mr. Dube, Meli.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I think my line is dead.
Yeah, okay, if you can hear us now, I was saying, how much do you think Zimbabwean youth are engaged in terms of shaping their own future? We are talking youth engagement.
Okay, young people in Zimbabwe are engaged, in my view. But there is basically two broad ways of engagement that I'm observing. There is what I would term maybe negative engagement. Negative engagement is where young people have been in the forefront of meting out violence, election-related or politically motivated violence in the country, and very closing up the space for other citizens to participate. I think we have seen it in all election years, where young people are in the forefront of meting out violence, beating up people, and being used by elderly politicians, being given small tokens like beer and maybe marijuana and other small things like that. Because there is very high levels of unemployment in my country. But also, I think there are some young people who have been engaged. We have sacrificed their youth. We have sacrificed a lot and given away the hope of working in big cities like London and the US, and stayed in country and tried to ensure that the civic space remains open. Most of them are leading civic society organizations. Some of them have taken up political offices, and some of them are rallying citizens to participate effectively in policy making, in ensuring that the country moves forward.
And Philemon will come to you now. Looking at what Melly is talking about in particular, he jumped right into what many are saying are the challenges that young Zimbabweans are facing. Can you touch on that, as you did earlier on our interview, on the issue of the negative engagement in regard to how young people in Zimbabwe are sometimes seen to be used as political pawns in order to push this negative ways of the higher politicians in the country?
Yeah, thank you very much. First thing that is in Zimbabwe, we have what we call high unemployment, and we have a lot of young people who are school dropouts, who don't have something to do, which is actually leading them to be those political pawns, like what I said earlier on, that we are being used as political pawns to achieve the checkmate in the bigger game of the political chess. Taking into consideration like what happened last year prior to the ZANU-PF Congress, where young people were used to tear apart the former Vice President, George Joe. So that's how young people are being used. And because that we don't have much in our pockets, those bigger guys in politics or the bigger guys in the civil society, like if we have noticed what is happening in the civic society, like what is happening in Crisis Coalition, where young people are being used to be in front of those wars rather than being the leaders of good things. That's what is happening in Zimbabwe. So we are very worried as an organization that we see most young people being used as such.
Tiuye kwamuri vazava timbopinda mururimi rwamai. Zuva iri rakakosha sei uye vechidiki veZimbabwe vakamira papi kana tichitarisa nyaya yekubatikana kwavo yekupindira mune kuti remangwana ravo rakamira sei?
Ndinotenda ndinoona dambudziko nderiripo, and chinhu chinotifadza ndechekuti seZimbabwe zuva ranhasi tiri kufara kuti tiri kufambemberera magamba. Ndikada kuti nditagire ipapo magamba akatisunungura senyika. Ndoda kuti nditange kutarisa kuti vazhinji vavo vemagamba vazhinji vavo pavakaenda kuti vasunungure nyika vanga vari vechidiki, ndochinhu chekutanga, and zvinhu zvinofadza. And vanhu vechidiki vakatora nguva yekuti nyika yedu iri panguva yakaoma, tingaita sei kuti tisunungure vana baba vedu, vana mai vedu nevanun'una vedu kana nehanzvadzi dzedu, zvinhu zvakaita saizvozvo. Asi dambudziko ratinaro panguva yatinayo izvozvo ndekuti vechidiki vedu vazhinji, ndingada kuwirirana navadhuwe vari kubulawayo, kuti vechidiki vedu vazhinji vanenge vatidzokerei kumashure, kana kuti tiri kuita kachiramwa kekuti maybe ndikari kubva pakutya, asi nyaya yekuti vechidiki vazhinji vangangova vaine chido kana kudokwaira kuti vagadzise zvinhu zvemunyika mavo, asi vazhinji vacho havana mukana wekuita izvozvo, zvinganzi pachirungu space yacho yekugadzirisa zvinhu zvavo munyika. Ndingati maybe pari kushayikwa maplatforms kana kuti nzvimbo dzavanokwanisa kunge vachibatsira nyika yavo, and zviri kubuda munzvimbo dzakawanda dzinosiyana-siyana, asi zvikuru zvacho ndezvekuti vanotitungamira kumberi uko havasi kuvhura mikana yevechidiki kuti vapowo pfungwa dzavo pane zviri kuitika munyika munomu. Vakawanda vatori nepfungwa dzakawanda, asi vechidiki mikana yacho haisi kubuda, kunze maybe zvavanotaura kuchikoro kwacho vanotombunyikidzwa, asi kuti vari vega vari panze apo kuti vanzi vatange kutaura zviri maererano nekutongwa kuri kuita nyika ino, kana zviri maererano neutungamiri hwavo, zvinosvika zvodzoka kunge zviri kutyisa.
Iye rambai makabata vaza vangu chegzava owe nhlanganiso ye-election resource center njengezinye izikhulumeli uyatsho kubana abatsha beZimbabwe kabawatholi amathuba kumbe ngithi kabaphiwa ithuba lokuthi babe bekhona ukuhlela ukubana elakusasa labo limi njani. Baba Dube singakabuyi kuwe khona ngapho Tatenda, we have a caller on the line, right?
We do. We have our first caller in South Africa. I hope I am getting your name right. I think Koma Clayto.
Yebo.
How are you? Thank you for joining us on The Connection.
Sorry?
I thank you for joining us on The Connection. How are you?
I'm fine.
Go ahead and give us your contribution looking at International Youth Day.
Yeah. Bengithanda ukuthi ngabe kuyatholakala ukuthi abantu abatsha babaphi i-chance manje abantu abatsha basebenzela abantu abadala vele yabo abantu abatsha basebenzisa ngendlela zokuthi babulale abantu abadala bayahamba bekhanda abadala babulale kwabasebenzisa khona ukuthi abanike i-chance ukuthi bangene embusweni hayi ababaniki.
Kodwa abasakhulayo labo kabakuvumeli yini lokho mnumzana ngoba ukubana kungenzeki yiko ukuthi ibale bona abasakhulayo bathi hayibo kasi isoze sisetshenziswe kodwa labo nxa bevuma bazahlala besetshenziswa phela.
Ya bona bayavuma ukuthi bayathokoza imali khona okuncane ukuthi hambani endaweni nje lichisa imizi yabo bani libulala obani yabo ukuthi ngabe bona bayabavumela la ukuthi abangeze upolitiki bakonsithi behlale kahle basebenze manje kula msebenzi zonke zisegangeni.
Wena ungosakhulayo mnumzana?
Iya ngosakhulayo nami.
Ngathi kuyini okwenzayo la ukubona ukubana uyalungiselela ekusasa lelizwe?
Singakubona phela ubucindezelo ukuthi ngabe bona buyaphela nje kuthiwa abantu bathola i-chance ukuthi bonke abantu kungabi lo muntu ethaya omunye bonke abantu bangene ezikhundleni bavunyelwe labo ukuthi abantu abanango-18 years kuya phezulu baconteste nabo bangene kuma-MPs bezekwala bekhonisa ama-president.
Okay, siyabonga mnumzana Khetho khona ngapho eMzansi.
Okay, wow.
Thanks there to our listener. We'll come back to you, Tato. Just your reaction on what's being said, especially the question now of those leaders that are now in power. Of course, when they started off, they were youth, they were young people leading the liberation struggle in Zimbabwe, for example. What's your take on that? The old guard versus the young guard, and the question of where can they come in and now move their country forward?
Okay. I think it's a very big challenge for Africa because I think at one point they were at the point where we are as young people. They wanted to bring change. They didn't want to be stuck in one place. But you look at African leadership right now. I don't want to generalize and say the rest of Africa, but taking a look at Zimbabwe and what I've just heard and my own country, you look at the leaders and you're like, were they even young at one point? You know what I mean? Because there are not many structures that are in place for young people. The energy is there, the initiative, the imagination, the innovation, the excitement, but there are no structures in place to support young people. So it's really a challenge. And then this is when they find themselves being used by people in power. This is why they end up being paid in kind, like the beer and, those unnecessary non-issues. Because at the end of the day, with the high rate of unemployment in Africa, with illiteracy, HIV and AIDS, and at the end of the day, everyone wants to be able to put food on the table. And if there's nothing that you can do that is legit to do that, this is why young people find themselves, being easily attracted to those illegal and not so ethical things. So when a politician comes and say, do this for me, and then it's not moral, it's not ethical, but you end up doing it because what else do you have at the end of the day? So it's a huge challenge for young people in Africa.
That's so true. And, one of the biggest challenges we have with the old guard is the culture of entitlement. Because all these people, the Mugabes and, many other leaders, they went to war. During that time, they liberated the country. Now they feel that perpetual sense of entitlement. They don't think it's correct politically and morally to let go and let the young generation take over. Anyway, sibuya kuwe Dube. Ngaphandle kokuphatheka kwezombusazwe kuyini okunye Dube okungenziwa ngabasakhulayo mhlawumbe kungaba indaba zokuvota kungaba indaba zokuorganize nje kuma communities ukuze labo bakhona ukutholakala beyingxenye yesigaba ingxenye yentuthuko ezama ukuba khona esigabeni zabo.
Okuqakathekileyo ngokubona kwami Ndunga
ukuthi as a politics okwakuqala kumele zibe yizo eziqondileyo njalo ezivumela ukuthi ontanga basebenze ngokukhululeka njalo elizweni elikhululekileyo. Kodwa into enganithiwa iyangikhathaza enkulumeni yethu yonke yona ukuthi abantu bathi there are no structures in place, kakulama framework abontanga kabanikwa lokhu kabanikwa lokhuya. Kodwa into kumele siyazi ukuthi ontanga kumele bangameleli ukuphiwa amathuba, kumele bawathathe lawo mathuba, ngoba sesikhangelisisa oSmith babesithi never in 1,000 years, okutsho ukuthi babecabanga ukuthi ilizwe leli ngelabo, kumele libe ngelabo kokuphela baze baye kufa kube babe ngokhokho, kube labanye abantu abazakuba ngelabo kokuphela. Kodwa abatsha bakuleli lizwe eZimbabwe basukuma bakwala lokho and kabamelelanga ukuthi kuthiwe kule framework, kabamelelanga ukuthi bahlale kumatafula bayi-analyze izinto, bagcine be-analyze every day. I think abatsha bakulezi nsuku kuningi kakhulu abangakwenza okungabakhaliphisa ingqondo njalo kubakhulule. Ngingathi kule imedia ikhulunywa nguthathe le ukuthi ayile propaganda lani la. Izinto kumele bazenze ikunanzelela kumbe ukunakekela engingathi ngabakhulu kumbe abagogekileyo abakhona ezigabeni zabo esingathi i-volunteerism. Ungakhangela ingcele izwe njenge-America, abatsha abaningi bayaphatheka emisebenzini ebenza ukuthi umendeza wabo abakhumbuze ukuthi ilizwe lisesimeni esinjani njalo kumele ukuthi babe ngabakhokheli abaqotho, ngoba ngiyesaba ukuthi abatsha laba abangazizisiyo ukuthi izizwe zakibo zinjani bangazi bangene embusweni kusasa, labo bazaba the same sense of entitlement because they don't understand what a leader should be.
Siyabonga Mnumzana Dube, qhubeka ubambile silo mlaleli ecingweni. Rickson, wakati yakho Rickson?
Na makati yenyu.
Aiwa tino fara edu pinda ko muchirongwa.
Ya, ndafara kutumanikiza mchirongwa.
Neso no fara Rickson taura hako.
Ya, ini ndinoona hangu kuti youth yemuZimbabwe is not participating zvakanyanya stereki kuti nyika ienderere kumberi. Why? Because nyika yedu is always inongoramba ichingorangaridzwa zvehondo, but yet takabuda muhondo kare, and youth has nothing to contribute towards the kungobudirirawo kwenyika yedu yeZimbabwe. Saka nyika yedu inoramba ichisarira kumashure kumadevelopment akawanda stereki anoitika. So I think panofana kuitwa change even ku-education system, zvakawanda zvinoda kuchinjwa stereki because nyika yedu inoramba ichisarira kumashure.
Aiwa tinotenda zvikuru mukoma Rickson. Asi muri wechidiki?
Ya.
Ko imimi zvizva muri kuita kuonawo kuti nyika iri kufambira mberi uyezve nyika inoburiswa mumadhaka airi pare zvino?
Zvinhu zviriko ndezvekuti isusu zvakanyanya chaizvo zvatingaita hapana, nokuti chero tikada kuti tive nemavoices akakwirira, unoona muZimbabwe zvinhu zvinoitika zvakawanda. Unogona kuita life yako inopinda pariski nezvinhu zvakawanda, and unenge uri munhu wababa kana amai, as a youth member unogona kuona kuti upenyu hwangu unogona kuzosarira kumashure, ndapinda muzvinhu zvakawanda zvinonetsa, kana kurohwa kana kuurawa kana kuita sei. Saka zvinhu zvokuti of course tinoitawo maprojectwo tichita sei zvinoita kuti upenyu huenderere mberi, asi upenyu hwedu hunenge huri at risk nyanya zvakanyanya stereki.
Aiwa tinotenda mukoma Rickson.
Maita yenyu.
Thank you so much. That's a sad reality about Zimbabwe right there. You know, we might say young people are not doing anything. We might find fault. We might point fingers, but Rickson just said it all there.
So I think Toya Kwaburi Mkoma Jack Zaba, just your reaction to Jataura Mkoma Rickson, where he's saying that in as much as young people in Zimbabwe want to participate, be civic, engagement, they find it hard because of the political and also economic situation prevailing in the country. What's your take there?
Ndinoona Mukoma Rickson wataura chinova chokwadi chiri kuitika mune vechidiki vazhinji, and izvi kuti normally if you look at our society, we have criminalized any form of civic engagement. We have criminalized all sources or all forms of which allows young people to engage with, for example, their elected officials, to a point where maybe if a young person wants to question or to make a check and balance on his or her councillor or her MP, it becomes very much politicized. It becomes a scary business. Yet that's the normal civic engagement we expect. We expect young people to engage or to share ideas with their elected officials. But at this present moment, because of bad politics that runs through Zimbabwe, we have bad politics where probably the young people who liberated this country unfortunately went on to cut off the same right they enjoyed or the same space they enjoyed as young people when they liberated this country. So they are not giving any space for young people to do the same, to shape their country. They did that before 1980, but no other young person is allowed to do anything, to contribute to anything. If you do that, and we have examples of that. We have Itai Zamara missing. We have a lot of young people who were named, injured, in their pursuit of their democratic right to engage as civilians, as citizens of Zimbabwe. So we have created a whole group of young people who are scared to be Zimbabwean. That's what I can say.
Mkoma Jamba yapinda yenyu ipapo.
Okay, I would like to agree with what my brother from another mother Zaba is Jamba again. Just matter worry, Papa. Young people are not being given the space to express what we feel in Zimbabwe. So what we have pertaining to the leadership in Zimbabwe. But what I want to say to all the young people who are listening right now is that big fish doesn't come in a silver platter. We have to work for it. So I think it is a challenge for us young people, like what those liberation war heroes did back then. They fought for it, and I think as young people we have to fight for it. And as young people we should be ready to fight for it. But one thing is fear. But the constitution in Zimbabwe actually states that we have every right to claim our space. Like what if we don't, if we feel that the government is not doing enough to address problems which are currently facing, it is very important for us to take it to the street. The constitution says that we are not even restricted to do that. So I think that's a challenge. Young people need to be educated about their rights. They need to know their rights. Like what but the government is actually trying by all means not to give such information, such pertinent information to us as young people. But I would like to thank those organizations like the ERC from my brother, Comrade Zaba. They try by all means to raise awareness. And also for my organization, New Forum, we do what you call constitution awareness, where we teach young people.
Philemon, just hold on, Chimambira. We'll be right back to you. Of course, right now, we'd like to just extend a farewell to our radio listeners. But as usual, we are still going on with our show, and we're streaming live on the internet where you can catch us there. And Tunga, let them know where they can find us.
We are at www.voazimbabwe.com. Please tune in. That's it from us for our radio listeners today. But like I said, tune in on the internet. Our guests, please remain on the line.
Good evening for those of you that have remained with us. Thank you. And for those of you that are just joining us, you are watching Studio 7 from the Voice of America. And this is Live Talk, the connection where we are discussing International Youth Day to find out how young Zimbabweans and other young Africans can join in on their civic engagement to uplift their communities and countries throughout the continent, but also throughout the world. Mchunga.
Indeed, and we have a star-studded panel of experts in terms of civic engagement. On the line, we have Jack Zava, Election Resource Center Project Manager, Philemon Jambaya, spokesman for the Zimbabwe Youth Forum. And also we have Melly Dube, Director for Bulawayo Agenda. And, of course, our in-house studio guest, Tato Mochone, Mandela Washington fellow from Lesotho.
And Koma Film, before we went to a break, Pedesai, your point, go ahead.
Okay, I was saying that as young people, we feel very intrigued with the government. It tries by all means to seek us to do, to express our rights. Like what I was saying, that there are clauses in the Constitution which allows that as young people, we have to take it. If we don't feel happy of what the government will be doing, the government of the day. That is there in the Constitution, which is Amendment number 20, the new Constitution, as many people would like to say. So, as Youth Forum, when it comes to civic engagement, I think most listeners are asking, what are they doing as an organization? What are they doing as young people about civic engagement? We try by all means to come, like what I said in the interview, that as an organization, tomorrow we are commemorating the day in Zimbabwe, where we are going to engage most young people on a focus group discussion, discussing the challenges which we face as young people, and coming up with solutions. Because we have realized that as an organization, we've realized that most organizations try to discuss problems, but they don't come up with solutions. So as an organization, we are saying we discuss the problems and identify our solutions. After identifying the solutions, we work towards implementing them. I really appreciate what my sister from Scotland was saying. We have a lot of young people, our partners in Scotland, who have been arrested for fighting for what they hope for fighting for the Scotland which they hope for. So that's the same scenario which we are facing in Zimbabwe. That's the same scenario which most young people in Africa are currently facing. So we are saying that young people in Africa should rise, young people. Look at the scenario of Itai Dzamara. Before Thursday, he was 35, which means that he was a youth. And as a youth, he stood for what he believed on. He stood for the Zimbabwe he worked for. But where is he now? We don't even know. And as young people, and also as a fellow journalist like me, I'm very worried. Where are we going in the country? That's my question, which needs answers. But who will answer that question? Not.
Thank you, the Koma Jambaya. And of course, Machone Tato is from Lesotho. However, Swaziland is another case. And Lesotho too. Tato, share with us your experiences from your country. Are young people engaged?
Young people would love to be engaged. Young people would really love to be engaged, but they are not. And it is not written. It is not written. It is not written. It is not said. Just like the other caller talked about media and freedom, you are free. Freedom of speech is there before you talk. Afterwards, it's a different story altogether. So there are no written rules. There are no spoken rules, but you just know, like, I can only go so far. And afterwards, it's just trouble for me. And I'm saying, if there are those discussions and meetups and trainings for young people, and there is no follow-up afterwards, what is the point? Because if you're going to come and teach young people how they can start businesses, and then they are empowered in those skills that they can start their own businesses, but then there's the struggle of tendership against entrepreneurship. Now, with the tendership, we know what happens in some countries of Africa, including my country. Because if you're not related to someone who's in power, someone who's in charge of giving out the tenders, now it is a problem, because in as much as you might have your own business, you go there, you tender, but it is already given to someone else. So I think that the problem really is with the authority, with the power. What are they doing? Are they committed? And I say, in my context, no. Young people are neglected. Young people are there. They are energized. They're excited. They want to do something, but there are constraints. There are barriers.
Let me just ask, looking at that issue, there's probably a young person out there right now who's saying, okay, if that's what Tato is saying, then why should I even waste my time? Engaging in anything, if it's not even political. If someone says to me, hey, come, let's work on women's issues, let's work on youth issues, let's work on education, someone might say, okay, but if I get this training, I can't implement it in my community. There's so much overhead. What do you say to them?
I'm saying it doesn't have to boil down to money. There are other resources that as young people we can use. For instance, it's a matter of coordination. What can you do? If you are a teacher, you are a trained teacher, there are students in your community that you can tutor on weekends. That's engaging, that's being relevant to your community. There are just so many things that young people can do, and it's only unfortunate that we depend on government so much, and we think that if the government doesn't help us, then there's nothing that we can do. But there's a lot that young people can do. It's only unfortunate because the general idea is that if we had the support of the government, maybe youth would impact robustly, economically, politically, socially, and otherwise. But otherwise, I can say there's a lot that the young people can do, starting with raising awareness about HIV and AIDS issues, male circumcision, which is such a big campaign in Africa right now, and a lot of things like gender-based violence, because there are still girls who are in relationship with boys and those boys beat them up. And they think it is okay because that's maybe they were raised in families where that happened and they thought it is okay. So as a young person, it is your duty to go ahead and teach your peers that this should not be happening. This is abuse and it cannot happen.
Uqinisile uThatho lapho ngoba nxa sikhuluma ngendaba ze-engagement, civic engagement, asikhulumi ngendaba ze-politics kuphela. Njengokutsho kwakhe, indaba zezabelo, indaba zokusokwa, indaba zoku-organize nje kuma-communities, indaba zokukhankasa ngendaba ze-HIV, ukwendiswa kwabantwana yi-civic engagement esikhuluma ngayo yona leyo. And maybe we should also read a quotation from the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, about the International Youth Day. He says, and I quote, "In this landmark year, as leaders prepare to adopt a bold new vision for sustainable development, the engagement of youth is more valuable than ever. At this critical moment in history, I call on young people to demand and foster the dramatic progress so urgently needed in our world."
Of course, and Tunga, there he goes to, like what Tato was saying here, the question of even volunteering community level. That might be even the easiest way for you to impact or give yourself a chance or be part of the movement, essentially, to impact your community and your country.
Indeed. And Mr. Dube Meli, can we focus on the global perspective? We have seen young people flocking to countries like Iraq and, Syria to do bad stuff, joining, terrorist groups like ISIS. And we also know we have our own problems in Africa. There's the problem of child soldiers. There are wars. And, young people are either forced or join voluntarily. Looking at this issue of, civic engagement, how do you engage young people to make sure they don't, join the bad guys?
Okay, I think you're right, Njunga. There's a chance, of course, of engaging young people to not participate in those things that you've mentioned. But I think what is very key is the environment. It is the socio-political and economic environment, the fundamentals. Do we have jobs for young people? Are we opening up opportunities for young people? And are we raising our children right? Are we giving them values? Do we have values as a society that sort of guides our youth, guides our young people to grow up and be better people tomorrow? You know, I think we have governments that have failed, mostly in third world and mostly in formerly colonized world. You can talk of those young people that are joining bad things, but you can also talk of young people that are flocking outside their motherland, looking in South Africa. Then they engage in xenophobic violence on each other, black on black violence, and then you go to your ISIS and others. You know, you have issues that are fermenting in their country that they are taking advantage of to mobilize young people. For instance, you have a Zimbabwe right now in my country where the government is not implementing devolution of power. There is no equal distribution of wealth, and young people are deprived of resources. And what they are left with is only to be enticed by some moron calling themselves some leader of a terrorist group to engage. And of course, it hasn't happened in Zimbabwe, but it's a very big possibility, because if people get desperate, they easily get hoodwinked and mobilized to do bad stuff, as long as it gives them some sort of living and also some space to vent out the pent-up anger, you know. So I think we have treated our governments, mostly in Africa, as governments that are led by blacks. Therefore, we have to reason with them. But I think any government needs a very vigilant youth that treats it as an enemy if it doesn't do what is favorable for its people.
Thank you there, Melly. Just hold on the line. Tinemterera riparunare ntunga tina Baba Shupi. Makadenyu Baba Shupi. Hello.
Bashupi muri parunare ere.
Ndofunga kuti yakata line.
Hello Bashupi.
I think
we seem to have lost that caller. But Tatenda, you spoke to somebody right before we came on air. Who was that?
Yeah, Ntunga, we had a chance to speak to the African Union Youth Officer. His name is Daniel Adunya. And he is, of course, was in Addis today, where they held a commemoration of the International Youth Day, day 1 of 2. Tomorrow they'll be engaging in a Twitter chat with Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who will be joining young people throughout the world, mainly in Africa, to discuss issues of a civic engagement. But let's take a listen to some of our chat we had today, where he highlights what came out of today's program, in particular what young people are saying they're doing to engage civically.
There were examples where somebody was saying where they organize and visit orphanages where they have children who have lost their parents, a dad or a mom, and are offering a project, what they call Offer a Dad. A lot of young people say they donate blood, especially knowing that a lot of young people lose their lives in car accidents, particularly in the urban areas. So they feel like when they donate blood, they feel like they're saving somebody's life, and that makes them feel important. Young people from particularly Nigeria, they gave examples how they're using a lot of technology and apps to monitor good governance and use participation in elections, voting, organizing, and the processes around it.
Can you give us some examples of some of the challenges that the youth said they're facing when it comes to youth civic engagement?
The perceived challenges were primarily looking at first the institutional arrangements that exist in the current systems. That means the gatekeepers in today's society may not necessarily recognize that transformation, what civic engagement today means to young people. There is still very big relevance and importance that people put on movements and, those activities around revolutions and everything that came around political ideologies from the past, which actually mean very less to young people today.
Owing to some of these challenges that you pointed out, of course, the idea is still to get young people to engage in civic engagement. What were some of the key takeaways?
There is the need for the shift even in attitude itself when it comes to civic engagement, whereby people are asking for change and better lives and improvements, but very little number of young people are actually willing to do anything about it. So without necessarily there being an obstacle up front, there is that shying away from that responsibility or embracing being the change agent. Other young people found it impressive how actually easy it is for youth to engage in daily life without necessarily being engaged in politics or people can engage in any field that they wish to.
And tomorrow we understand that in commemoration, your second day, you'll be having a Twitter tweet chat. Can you tell our audience how they can join that tweet chat tomorrow?
The event is a live event that again brings some young people from around, but also connecting all young people across Africa, but also from across the world. To join our chairperson, Her Excellency Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, in a tweet chat, the main conversations would be posted using the hashtag YouthDayAU and YouthDay. People can send their questions to @AU Youth Program, and they can post their questions as well, and we hope that those questions would be picked and would get a response, or other young people could also offer responses to them.
Thank you there to African Union Youth Officer Daniel Adunya, who joined me earlier talking about what the AU is doing for their commemoration of International Youth Day.
Indeed, Tatenda. And before we go to our news headlines recap, we have a caller on the line. Bashupi, Mori right here.
Mkoma Magadi.
Three boy do ameno imimi.
Tiwatano.
That's good. Tipe ufungwa zenyu pachidimbo.
Fungwa zangu pachidimbo zinoti isuku Zimbabwe ku atina kusununguka zvachose vechidike kupinda mupolitics. Nekuti Zimbabwe inooneka senyika yakangotarisirwa kunzi itongwe nevanhu vechikuru vanoziva nezvehondo vakabva kuhondo. Padiki rudzidzo rwavainarwo rwese handizivi kuti vanoda kuti rushande papi ende harushandi, harupi mukana zvachose nekuda kwehurumende yedu. For example, ezvinezvi tiri kunzwa zvaitaidza mara anoda kuedza kuisawo ruzivo rwavo kupinda muutungamiriri anoshayika. Vana Jongwe vakangotsakatika vakadaro, vechidiki vese hakuna anombopiwa mukana. Nyika yemadhara. Saka in Zimbabwe, I think it's like wasting your time. Kana uri vechidiki haupinde mupolitics, hautambirwe zvakakwana.
Aiwa, mataura tinotenda zvikuru nekupinda muchirongwa chedu. Bashupi, mudzoke mangwana.
Maita yenyu, thank you very much.
No space to enter politics for young people in Zimbabwe, as he says.
Yeah, and quickly, before we recap, let's go to our news headlines.
Zimbabwe yacherechedza zuva remauto nhasi reNational Defence Forces Day paurongwa hwaiitirwa kuNational Sports Stadium. Asi vamwe vanoti vaswera vachitsvaga zvinoraramisa mhuri dzavo pane kuti vaende kumhemberero dzezuva remauto. Sangano reUnited Nations rinoti vechidiki vanofanirwa kupindira zvizere munyaya dzeutungamiriri nematongerwo enyika kuitira kuti vakwanise kugadzirira ramangwana ravo. studio 7 inoenda kumount darwin uko inotaura nevamwe ishe vari kuita basa rekugadzirisa pakaradzikwa varwiri verisununguko munguva yehondo.
President Mugabe leads the nation in saluting the country's defense forces for their work in a ceremony boycotted by the opposition, citing the use of such events by the ruling ZANU-PF to denigrate opposing parties. In our economy segment, we looked at the ripple effects of the continuing job losses, with reports saying close to 20,000 people have lost their jobs in the past 3 weeks. After its Harare protest was quashed by police on Saturday, the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions, or ZCTU, says it is now turning to the courts for legal protection ahead of a rescheduled march over the ongoing worker retrenchments across the country.
Umongameli Robert Mugabe utshela umbuthano wokunanza ilanga labezomvikela ukuthi kwakunzima ukumanyanisa ivuyo lezandla zebra lele Rhodesia. Umanyano we-United Nations uthi abasakhulayo kumele baphatheke ngamandla kwezombusazwe lakundaba zokukhokhela ukuze bazilungiselele ikusasa elihle. Inhlanganiso yabazingeli eZimbabwe Professional Hunters and Guides Association ithi sebevunyelwa ukuzingela izilwane ingwe lendlovu kulandela ukufakwa kwemigoqo yokuthi kungenziwa lokhu kulandela ukubulawa kwesilwane ekade silodumo esibizwa ngokuthi ngusisili.
Course, the recap of the headlines today. And quickly, as we run out of time to end our program, we'll come to you, Tato. We know earlier you posted on your Facebook asking the youth that you deal with day to day their take on International Youth Day. What are they saying quickly, if you can let us know?
Yeah, I'll just get to just 2 comments. This is Masitoti Pofu. She works with youth and women, and she says, talk about whether our country is ready to nurture or even our government is in the position to commit itself to supporting youth initiatives. And she goes on to say the answer is simply no. Theoretically, everybody's saying they are committed, especially now that everyone sees that many government ministries are talking about a lot of youth programs. But in planning and implementation, youth are not involved. One can only see the old men and women going to different districts, planning youth issues without even a single youth in their midst. Because of their vested interest, they will never do the task shifting. And this one is from a very prominent artist in the country, young person. She says, our current government in Lesotho is lacking and lagging behind when it comes to youth initiatives and programs. We are stuck behind cultural norms and practices that do not recognize modern initiatives. She goes on to say, not only is our government made up of senior citizens looking to fill their pockets before the official retirement, but they do so at the expense of our youth, promising them a platform for their initiatives while not delivering. And she goes on to say, our youth are highly disadvantaged due to this. Our hopes are raised in falseness and then put down and tempted as a radical in society that refuses to acknowledge evolution. We have no jobs not supported for our own initiatives.
Sadly, you can place a lot of names there. That might be some the African story for some young people, unfortunately.
Siqhubeka uhlelo lethu lamhlanje. Mnumzana Dube, ungathanda ukuphosa liphela ukucina ngamafitshane.
Ngathanda ukuthi abatsha beZimbabwe bezwekazi le-Afrika nabomhlaba wonke jikelele kumele bakunanzelele ukuthi inkokheli yonke ingangena embusweni khanga ngani iba selfish kumbe iyalibala kakhulu ukuthi abantu kumele baphilise kanjani. Ngakho-ke kungumlando kabani lobani oyintanga ukuthi alungiselele ikusasa ngobuhle, ngokuthula, ngokubonisana amaqhinga angakha izizwe, kodwa bangakhohlwa ukuthi abatsha lanxa bezondile kuyazisise ukuzonda kwabo, lanxa besilwa kuyazisise ukuzonda kwabo, ngoba kumele balwe bazonde njalo ngokuthi ikusasa kalungiselelwa kakuhle.
Siyabonga mnumzana Dube. Vaza vapachi dimbo tipe manzu yenyu ekuvara Chirongwa. Alo, vazava.
Hello.
Vazava tipe manzu yenyu ekuvara Chirongwa pachi dimbo.
Right. Kana kuti ndiye uchidza vana veZimbabwe murundizwa.
Tumunzwai.
Right. Ndingada kuti nditaure kuti tiri kuona dambudziko ratawana munyika. Utungamiri hunova hwakatora nyika huri hwechidiki, hautoda kuti vechidiki vave nezvekuita nenyika iyoyo zvine pundutso. Saka nyaya yavapo ndevechidiki hatichafaniri kumirira kuti tipiwe mukana iyoyo nevakuru ava. Panyaya yekudhimanda senzvimbo yavakaita iye Smith akavarambidza, asi taakufarwa kusvika nzvimbo yekuti zvatarambidzwa taakutora nenharo kuti iraiti yedu sevana veZimbabwe, ikodzero yedu sevana veZimbabwe kuti zviri kuitika muZimbabwe tive nechekuita nazvo. Saka ngatitore mukana iyoyo, hatimiriri kupiwa nevadhara ava, nekuti vadhara ava vari kutosvika panzvimbo yekuti unotanga kutoona kuti anomirira wechidiki kubato iroro ane 67 years. Saka vanhu vasingatodi nezvevechidiki. Yanyaya yekuti ikana yatiri kusuwira ngatitore tega, kana zvichida nechisimba totora.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru mukoma Zava. Hanzi tine mutereri parunhare, tatenda mukoma Donald pachidimbu. Mukoma Donald, tipei pfungwa dzenyu, nguva dzafamba.
Mukoma, ndoda ngotaura zvekutaurwa namukoma Zava, ndoda kuchinidzira pane zvavari kutaura kuti muno muZimbabwe mayuthi tiri kushanya kushandiswa kupolitics, tichishandiswa kupevhera vamwe wei. And apa tichipevhera vakuru vati mabig wigs ndo atiri kupevhera wei. Takamuona vanhu achishandiswa vachita violence vachiponda vanhu ndezvikiretera yavo mabig wigs kuti ivo mukana. Isusu mayuth hatisi kuzvitarisa position yedu kuti papi tichaenda kupi. Sometimes tongorememberwa nguva diki diki kana towadzi maelection ndopa paanenge achitengerwa doro ende hakusi kurememberwa isachi, nokuti kutengerwa doro vanhu vachiponda vanhu. Upenyu hwese kana kuti 5 years dzese dzingachitambura. Saka hatine jane of 1,000 miles dzatoda kuti tifanire kuti tigokwanisa kusvikewo pakuti tawane mukana.
Tinotenda mukoma Donald.
Thanks, Mkoma Donald. And vajambaya pachidimbu 30 seconds tivharire chirongwa.
I just want to say to those young people in Zimbabwe, we have to rest. Like now, I'm walking in the street of Harare right now. We have a lot of vendors, a lot of touts who are young people. We don't have employment. So it is that time as young people, we have to rise. Let us focus on the Constitution. Let us use the clauses in the Constitution to fight for what we believe in. Like what our heroes and heroines did during their time to fight the colonials. Let us fight the colonials of today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mkoma Jambaya. And of course, Tato, give us your last word. We should say, however, this is not the last time listeners will be hearing from you. We're going to be having you for quite some time, a few weeks. But for today, give us your last word briefly.
Okay, to young people out there, it begins with you. You don't have to wait for government to do anything. You have the power. Just by being there, just by existence, you are living for a reason, because every day when you wake up, ask yourself a question. Why am I living? And for the virtue that you are alive, there's something that you can do. You can touch the lives of people around you by volunteering your time, by volunteering the resources that you have. And be bold. Be a statistic. Be one of those people that will be counted that you did something for your country, for your fellow men, and for you as a person.
Great.
Wonderful words.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We should say thank you to Tato Mochone, Mandela Washington Fellow, Meli Dube, Director, Bulawayo Agenda, Philemon Jambaya, Zimbabwe Youth Forum, Jake Zaba, Election, our Resource Center, and of course our producers and our researcher, Rungano Kaya. And we're gonna see you guys next week on Tuesday, because when it's Tuesday,
it is the LiveTalk, the connection. Make sure you join us next Tuesday. We'll be here in Tungana, and I think maybe you'll come again. It was wonderful being joined by you this evening, and as usual, make sure you have a good night, good week, and join us next Tuesday.
Good night, Zimbabwe.